Welcome back. And you can see I'm here with Casper again, and I don't think Casper will stay for much of the interview, but it's nice we can begin both he and I together. So, today I'm going to talk about the near-death experience, but I want to focus on the changes in consciousness that occurs. Sometimes people talk about the gifts they're given after the near-death experience has occurred, and many times people are changed. I think what I'm going to do is ask a great friend of mine. In fact, she was one of the nurses that helped me with the death study and the hospices, and she has had a near-death experience, so she will go and explain this. But I want you to really think about the changes which are occurring to her and which occur to many people of the near-death experience. Many of them, we don't know how much because nobody's done a proper survey yet on this, have an alteration in their level of consciousness. And this is shown by changes in behavior, becoming more spiritual, being no longer afraid of death. But rather more important than that, they start seeing the world quite differently. And if you start seeing the world differently, then you may find that some of your relationships alter, and there are accounts of people changing their marriage partners after they've had a near-death experience. So let's then start with Sue, and she will describe the factors which led up to her first NDE. Thank you. Exactly what happened at that time.
30 years ago, or next year, I was in a light aircraft, and we were flying about 2,000 feet up, and the propeller stopped going round. And basically, when the propeller stops going down round, you sort of start heading to the ground quite quickly. And obviously, we both, the pilot and I, lived to see the day, but it changed my life considerably. It wasn't actually so much the crash, although, gosh, you never forget anything like that when you sort of face death square in the face. But the big thing for me was the mystical vision I had afterwards, and that was profound. Yes, I was taken out of my body. Well, was I taken? I went out of my body. It felt like the curtains in my forehead parted. That's the only way I can explain what happened. And I was surrounded by the most amazing love. It's a love I'd never experienced here on earth and never have. Well, I've been here for these 65 years. And it was it was more than beautiful. It was beatific, really. It was a love that was so understanding, so compassionate, so kind, so there, really. That's what it felt like. And I was looked down to I don't know why, but I felt like I wanted to look down to my left. And I saw this lime yellow colour pouring out of my. That was my life story, and I could dive into that yellow colour at any point I wanted and swim around in it, really, and review my life. Nobody else was going to review it. It was only me. And there was no judgment. It was just, this is what it was. And then it wasn't a voice, but it wasn't, it's so difficult to put into words, but there was an absolute knowing that life was only an experience, but it was what you made of the experience that mattered, what you make of this life that matters. And as soon as I went, oh, it was a bit like this presence, this love just vanished. and the curtains sort of closed again in my forehead, and I was back in life, and it.
So, Sue, what happened to you at the moment of change? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Whoa. It sort of crept up on me, I think. And I think it's because I released so much fear of being alive and so much fear of who I was. There's a sort of profound sense of connection to, some people call it the divine. Some people call it, I don't know, the light or the higher consciousness or the field or quantum consciousness or whatever you want to call it. I quite like the idea of quantum consciousness. That works for me. And I just feel infused by it. I think what happened for me is I made room for it.
This idea of clearing is most important. We'll come across that as we prepare ourselves for death, once I've left near-death experiences and go on to death. Clearing is the giving up of attachments. In Sue's case, it was giving up of grief, giving up of all the things that were making her feel sad and realizing that they weren't what was important in her life. So clearing is one of the primary ways that we can change our level of consciousness, and particularly it's one of the ways that we prepare ourselves for death. So let's go on. Sue, when you see people, do you see them as energy or bodies?
I see both. I get feelings. I see body, but I feel their energy. And if that feels good for me, I take notice of that. If it feels bad for me, I certainly take notice of that. Or not bad, but it doesn't fit with me.
Sue, have you lost all your thoughts? You know, the narrative self, the bit of you that always chatters all the time, has that gone completely, or has it reduced a lot?
I think it's part of being human, that commenting. But what I am profoundly aware of is being mindful of all my thoughts. And I'm very mindful the way my thoughts work, and I catch myself if I'm going into I don't really do negative thinking or thoughts anymore, to be honest with you. But if I catch myself and go, that is not where I'm coming from anymore, that doesn't serve where I want to develop and open up into.
Sue's describing a definite change in consciousness here. She's much more aware of her thoughts. She doesn't follow negative thoughts. And the whole idea of this commenting, criticizing, detracting self, which is talking all the time inside you, in Sue has greatly reduced itself. And as she's progressed, it's absolutely gone. Sue, if you look right down into the depth of yourself, right at the bottom, what's it like? Can you tell me how you feel?
Light. I think that's what I'm beginning to understand, that I'm created by light and love. And I'm not talking about human love. I'm talking about the love that I experienced in the mystical vision, quantum love, for a better word to describe it. Love is, it's just so, it doesn't do it justice. That is where I am bubbling up. It feels like champagne bubbles. Doesn't happen all the time, but happens an awful lot of times.
Sue, are you living in the past or the present, or do you live now in the moment?
Oh, I really, I'm a future girl. I've always been I've never been a past person. I've always lived in the future. But boy, every day now I really catch myself. And today, this moment is the most important moment, because everything's brought me to this moment. This is it. It's the magic of life. And I'm creating a garden at the moment, and the joy I'm having watching every day the plants come up, and my hen's laying an egg, and all of those wonderful things that nature brings you. That is what's important for me. Who cares about tomorrow? It hasn't happened. The past has, and you either deal with it and come to terms with it, or you stay stuck in it. But it's about living in the moment. This moment is so precious. That's gone already. It keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. So yeah.
This is a very good description by Sue of what it feels like when your level of consciousness has raised itself. She is now always in the moment. She works from the moment, she makes her decisions from the moment. This immediacy is very important because it's one of the things about raised consciousness. You're there, you see what's happening, and you act. And so you're not in the past and you're not in the future.
Sue, can you tell us what happened? How did this occur? Do you remember the moment that you changed?
Well, it was growing, I have to say, and it was October the 31st last year. I've known all of this intellectually, without question. I've been on this path since the plane crash, so that's 30 years, not a stone unturned. I've been to every workshop, I've been to, oh my gosh, I've trained as a psychotherapist, you name it, I've been on the path. Everything was in my head. I knew it logically. And I knew it wasn't in my body yet. It's a different feeling. And we're hearing people who'd had, when it was in their body, it was different. And I was listening to Dr. Bruce Lipman, who wrote that wonderful book, which one it is, the biology, biology of belief. Fantastic book. And I was listening to him, and it was something about, he was talking about quantum consciousness. He was explaining quantum consciousness, and he flicked my switch. I was watching him on YouTube, and it was just like, oh my God. And it was just like whoosh straight into my body. It was extraordinary. And I felt as if I was ascending.
This is Sue's description of her conversion experience. Now remember what we've been talking about. We've been talking about Sue's NDE, and the change that initiated in her originally. Then she told us about her great sadness and the clearing that she did, and this is again enormously important. And she describes it's as if it made space for this new level of consciousness to dawn in her. And now we've come to the actual point where the new consciousness arrived. But remember, we've already been talking about some of its characteristics. We've talked about the fact that she's always in the present, she's deep down happy, she's lost her narrative self, she's become very intuitive. All these things are a consequence of what she is describing now.
Do you think that the level of consciousness is changing in the world? Are you just an example of people who are coming to a different level?
I think the only thing is there's an awful lot being written and talked about now about consciousness, the raising of consciousness, and we have to do, as humanity has to do that in order to survive. I don't think there's any question about that. And I just say to anybody, if you're going through a really, really hard time at the moment, because an awful lot of people are, there's so many changes going on, personally and globally, stay with it. It's all right. Just believe there's something more than you that is carrying you, holding you, nurturing you, cradling you. And one day it will land in your body and you will be free. And that's the only word I can explain it as. You will be free. You'll just go, oh my God, I get it.
So as you can see, Sue has changed enormously. This is very important because a large number of people have NDEs, and the phenomena which follow them are very varied. For example, from our book, I've just taken a couple, and here's Mrs. Boardman, who says, since the accident I've become very aware of psychic things. and on several occasions had strong premonitions that eventually have happened. So people feel as if they've become psychic. Also, they are a nuisance when they're around computers, because the computers stop. But there's more on this. And so let's do that next time. And I want you to take away from this session that there is a much wider stream of consciousness to which we can have access, and people do. And at different levels in this stream of consciousness, you perceive the world differently. And let's take away what Sue says. She is now absolutely free. How many of you can say that you're absolutely free in the way that she is? She lives in the present. The present is what she loves. And when the present is there and she's alert and awake, then it's just wonderful. So clearly the level of consciousness she's at now is for her a very beneficial level, and indeed perhaps it's a level that many of us should also strive to achieve. And I hope by the time we've finished this whole series we'll have looked at different ways of being able to change our own consciousness, not only through near-death experiences, because I don't advise anybody to have a heart attack. So then, thank you for listening, and just one announcement. I have a new book, Dan. I have a new book which is coming out, and it's called Shining Light on Transcendence. This is one of the earlier cover pictures of it, The Unconventional Journey of a Neuroscientist. And this story is about meeting a man who is able to give light when he meditates, and the effects that this can have on you and other people. So more of this next time. Thanks very much for being with us.